Hello everyone, I am the storyteller. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now get comfortable and relax. The headlights appeared out of nowhere, twin beams cutting through the darkness behind me. I squinted at the rear-view mirror, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. Where had this truck come from? The highway had been empty for miles. It was well past midnight, and I was on the final stretch of a grueling cross-country drive. My eyelids felt like sandpaper, and the endless ribbon of asphalt ahead blurred into a hypnotic streak. I'd been pushing myself to make it home before dawn, but now, with this truck bearing down on me, I was wide awake. The cab loomed large in my mirror, impossibly close. I tapped my brakes, hoping the driver would take the hint and back off. No luck. If anything, it seemed to inch even closer. "Come on. Just pass me already," I muttered, easing over to the right lane. The truck matched my move perfectly, staying right on my tail. I could practically count the rivets on its grille. My heart started to race. This wasn't normal behavior, even for the most impatient driver. I pressed down on the accelerator, watching the speedometer climb, 70, 75, 80 miles per hour. The truck kept pace effortlessly, never falling behind. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I was alone on a deserted highway with a truck that seemed determined to run me off the road. My mind raced through possible explanations, each more unsettling than the last. Road rage? A drunk driver? Or something worse? I spotted a sign for an upcoming rest stop and made a split-second decision. I'd pull in there, where there might be other people around. Safety in numbers, right? As I took the exit, the truck followed. I cursed under my breath, hands shaking as I navigated the dark, twisting road leading to the rest area. The parking lot came into view, illuminated by a single flickering streetlight. It was empty. I pulled into a spot near the restroom building, killing the engine. The truck's headlights flooded my rearview mirror, blinding me. I squeezed my eyes shut, heart pounding in my ears. This was it. Whatever was going to happen would happen now. Seconds ticked by. Then, silence. The light behind me vanished. Slowly, I opened my eyes and turned around. The parking lot was empty. No truck, no headlights. Nothing but darkness and the faint buzz of the streetlight above. I sat there, frozen, for what felt like hours. My mind struggled to process what had just happened. Had I imagined it all? Was I so exhausted that I'd hallucinated a threatening truck? Eventually, I gathered the courage to step out of my car. The cool night air hit my face, helping to clear my head. I walked a lap around the parking lot, half expecting the truck to reappear at any moment. But there was no sign it had ever been there. As the adrenaline began to fade, exhaustion crept back in. I decided to try to get some sleep in my car before continuing my journey. I reclined the seat and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I started to drift off, I'd jerk awake, certain I'd heard the rumble of an engine. The sky was just beginning to lighten when I gave up on sleep. I needed coffee if I was going to make it the rest of the way home. I started the car and pulled out of the rest stop, constantly checking my mirrors for any sign of the truck. The highway was still eerily empty as I merged back onto it. My nerves were shot, and every vehicle I saw in the distance made my heart rate spike. But none of them were the truck that had chased me. About an hour later, I spotted a 24-hour diner just off the highway. The parking lot was half full, a welcome sight after the emptiness of the night. I pulled in, desperate for caffeine and human contact. The bell above the door jingled as I entered. A few heads turned to look at me, then went back to their own conversations or plates of food. I slid into a booth near the window, still able to keep an eye on my car and the highway beyond. A waitress approached, coffee pot in hand. "Rough night?" she asked, eyeing my disheveled appearance as she filled my cup. I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "You could say that. Had a bit of a scare on the highway." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what happened?" I hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. How could I explain what I'd experienced without sounding crazy? "There was this truck," I began. It followed me for miles, riding my bumper. When I pulled over at a rest stop, it just vanished. The waitress's expression changed, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She glanced around, then leaned in closer. "You're not the first to come through here with a story like that," she said in a low voice. My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" She sighed, sliding into the seat across from me. "In the past few months, we've had a handful of drivers stop in here, all shaken up about a truck that chased them on the highway. Always at night. Always on that same stretch you came in on." I leaned forward, hanging on her every word. "Did they see who was driving it?" She shook her head. "That's the thing. No one ever sees a driver, and the truck always disappears without a trace." A chill ran down my spine. What do you think it means?" The waitress shrugged, but her eyes were serious. "I don't know, but there's been a string of robberies on that highway lately. Cars found abandoned, drivers missing. Police haven't been able to catch whoever's behind it." My mind reeled, trying to connect the dots. A phantom truck, disappearing drivers, unsolved robberies. It was like something out of a nightmare. "Has anyone reported this truck to the police?" I asked. She nodded. "A few have tried, but without any evidence, and with the truck always vanishing. Well, let's just say the police aren't taking it too seriously." I sat back, processing this information. Part of me felt relieved that I wasn't the only one who had experienced this, that I wasn't going crazy, but a larger part was terrified. What was really going on out there on that lonely stretch of highway? The waitress must have seen the fear in my eyes. She reached out and patted my hand. "Look, you made it here safe. That's what matters. My advice? Stick to driving during the day if you can. And if you see that truck again, get somewhere public as fast as you can." I nodded, grateful for her kindness and the warning. As she stood to get back to work, a thought occurred to me. "Wait," I called after her. "You said there have been robberies, missing drivers, but I wasn't robbed. The truck didn't even stop when I pulled over. Why?" She turned back, a grim expression on her face. "Maybe you got lucky, or maybe they were just scouting, learning your habits, your reactions, for next time." With that chilling thought, she walked away, leaving me alone with my cooling coffee and racing thoughts. I stayed at the diner far longer than I'd planned, nursing cup after cup of coffee as I watched the sun rise fully. The normalcy of the morning rush helped ground me, reminding me that the world wasn't all dark highways and phantom trucks. When I finally got back on the road, I felt more in control. The highway looked different in the daylight, less menacing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that somewhere out there, the driver of that ghost truck was waiting for another opportunity. I made it home without further incident, but the experience stayed with me. I found myself researching highway robberies in the area, looking for patterns or clues. I even considered reporting my experience to the police, but always stopped short. What could I tell them that wouldn't sound completely insane? Weeks passed, and slowly, the intensity of that night began to fade. I still avoided driving that stretch of highway after dark, but the constant fear subsided. Life went on. Then, about a month after my encounter, I saw a news report that made my blood run cold. A car had been found abandoned on that same highway, the driver missing. Witnesses reported seeing a large truck in the area just before the disappearance. As I stared at the TV screen, a chill ran down my spine. I couldn't help but wonder, had I really escaped that night, or had I just postponed the inevitable? The highway stretched out before me, a dark ribbon cutting through the night, but now, every set of headlights in my rearview mirror made me flinch. Every truck that passed sent my heart racing. The once peaceful solitude of a late-night drive had been shattered, replaced by a constant, gnawing fear. I knew one thing for certain. I would never look at an empty highway the same way again. because now I knew that sometimes, in the dead of night, those highways aren't as empty as they seem, and the things that lurk in the darkness don't always disappear when you turn to face them. The shovel struck something hard, sending a jolt up my arms. I paused, wiping sweat from my brow with a muddy hand. We'd been digging for hours, and the well was supposed to be nothing but dirt for at least another 10 feet. I called down to my son, Jake, who was working beside me in the hole. "Hey, grab the flashlight, will you? I think we hit something." Little did I know, that metallic clang would be the sound that changed everything. I'd inherited this farm from my uncle 6 months ago. It was a fixer-upper, to put it mildly, but it was a chance for a fresh start after the divorce. Jake and I had thrown ourselves into the work, fixing fences, repairing the barn, and now, digging a new well. The old one had run dry years ago, and we needed water if we were going to make a go of this place. Jake shone the flashlight where my shovel had struck. The beam reflected off something smooth and metallic, a stark contrast to the dark earth surrounding it. "What is that, Dad?" Jake asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I shrugged, already scraping away more dirt with my hands. "I don't know, bud. Let's find out." As we dug, the object began to take shape. It was a metal container, about the size of a small suitcase. It looked old, the once shiny surface now pitted and corroded. My mind raced with possibilities. A time capsule, buried treasure, or just some farmer's junk, tossed in a hole and forgotten. It took another hour of careful digging to free the container from the earth. By the time we hauled it out of the well, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the field. We carried our find back to the barn, both of us silent, lost in our own thoughts about what might be inside. Under the harsh glare of the barn's floodlights, I examined the container more closely. It was sealed tight, with no obvious way to open it. A faded inscription was barely visible on one side, but years of corrosion had made it illegible. "Should we open it?" Jake asked, practically bouncing with excitement. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to call the police and or maybe a lawyer. What if this was evidence of something? But curiosity won out. "All right," I said, reaching for a crowbar. "Stand back." It took some effort, but finally the lid creaked open. The smell hit us first, musty and damp, like an old cellar. Inside, protected by layers of waxy paper, was a stack of documents and photographs. I picked up the first photo, holding it under the light. It showed a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, and smiling at the camera. The picture was old, probably from the 1960s, judging by her hairstyle and clothes. I turned it over. On the back, in faded ink, was written, "Sarah Milligan, 1964. Jake peered over my shoulder. "Who's that, Dad?" I shook my head. I don't know. But as I said it, a nagging feeling started in the pit of my stomach. The name Milligan sounded familiar, but I couldn't place why. We spent the next hour going through the contents of the box. There were more photos, all of the same young woman, Sarah, at various locations around what looked like this very farm. There were also letters, newspaper clippings, and a small leather-bound journal. As I flipped through the journal, a yellowed newspaper clipping fell out. The headline made my blood run cold. "Local woman still missing after 3 months." I read the article quickly, my heart pounding. Sarah Milligan had disappeared from her family's farm in the summer of 1964. Despite an extensive search, no trace of her was ever found. The article mentioned that Sarah's father, the owner of the farm, was the primary suspect but was never charged due to lack of evidence. "Dad?" Jake's voice snapped me back to the present. "What's wrong?" I looked at my son, trying to keep my voice steady. "Jake, I think we just found evidence in a very old missing persons case." His eyes widened. "Really? Like a real mystery?" I nodded, my mind racing. Yeah, bud. A real mystery. I started gathering up the documents, careful not to disturb them more than necessary. We need to call the police. The next few hours were a blur. Deputies came out to the farm, followed by detectives and a crime scene unit. Our quiet little farmhouse became the center of a whirlwind of activity. Jake and I were questioned separately, telling and retelling how we'd found the box. It was past midnight when things finally calmed down. The box and its contents had been taken away as evidence, and we'd been told not to discuss the case with anyone, as if we knew anyone to discuss it with. We were still new in town, barely knew our neighbors. I tucked Jake into bed, his head full of excitement about our discovery, but sleep eluded me. I sat at the kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee in front of me, staring out at the darkened fields. What had happened to Sarah Milligan? And why did her name sound so familiar? The next morning, I drove into town, determined to do some digging of my own. The local library was small, but it had archives of the town's newspaper going back decades. I spent hours poring over microfiche, reading everything I could about the Milligan case. Sarah had been 23 when she disappeared, engaged to be married. Her fiancé had reported her missing when she didn't show up for a date. The last person to see her was her father, James Milligan, who claimed she'd left the farm to run errands in town. As I read, pieces started falling into place. James Milligan. That was my uncle's name. The uncle who'd left me this farm. With a growing sense of dread, I realized why Sarah's name had sounded familiar. My mother had mentioned her once, years ago, a cousin who'd gone missing before I was born. I left the library in a daze, my mind reeling. Had my uncle been involved in Sarah's disappearance? Had I inherited not just a farm, but a dark family secret? When I got home, there was a police car in the driveway. Detective Reeves, the lead investigator, was waiting for me. "Mr. Collins," she said as I got out of my truck. "We need to talk." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd spent a sleepless night. Detective Reeves didn't waste time on pleasantries. "We've identified the DNA on some of the items in the box," she said, her eyes boring into mine. "It matches Sarah Milligan. We're treating this as a homicide investigation now." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Mr. Collins, I have to ask, did you know anything about this before you found that box?" I shook my head vehemently. "No, absolutely not. I inherited this farm from my uncle 6 months ago. I never even met him." She raised an eyebrow. "Your uncle?" I took a deep breath. "James Milligan, Sarah's father." Detective Reeves leaned back, surprised. "You're related to the Milligans?" I explained what I'd learned at the library, about the connection I'd only just discovered. As I talked, I could see the wheels turning in the detective's mind. "Hey, Mr. Collins, I'm going to be straight with you," she said when I finished. "This complicates things. We're going to need to do a thorough search of the property, and I'm afraid you and your son might need to find somewhere else to stay for a while." I nodded, feeling numb. "Of course, whatever you need." The next few weeks were a nightmare. The farm became a crime scene, with police and forensic teams combing every inch of the property. Jake and I moved into a motel in town, watching from afar as our new home was torn apart in search of evidence. The story hit the local news, then went national. Suddenly, our quiet little town was overrun with reporters and true crime enthusiasts. Everyone wanted to know about the mysterious box, about Sarah Milligan, about the farmer who'd inherited a decades-old secret. I tried to shield Jake from the worst of it, but it was impossible to hide everything. He was old enough to understand the basics of what was happening, and his initial excitement about solving a mystery had given way to a more somber understanding of the reality we were facing. It was Jake who asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Dad, do you think Uncle James did it? Do you think he killed Sarah?" I pulled him close, wishing I had a better answer. "I don't know, buddy. I really don't know." As the investigation dragged on, more details emerged. Old case files were reopened, witnesses re-interviewed. The picture that emerged was a sad one. Sarah had wanted to leave the farm, to start a life with her fiancé. James Milligan had opposed the marriage, wanting Sarah to stay and help run the family business. But there was no smoking gun, no confession, just a lot of circumstantial evidence and a family torn apart by secrets and suspicion. Finally, after nearly 2 months, we were allowed to return to the farm. The police had found no other evidence, and while the investigation remained open, they had no reason to keep us from our home. The farm felt different now. Every creaking floorboard, every rustle in the field seemed to whisper of long-buried secrets. I found myself avoiding the spot where we'd found the box, as if Sarah's ghost might be lingering there. As we settled back into our routines, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were living in the shadow of a tragedy. The farm that was supposed to be our fresh start now felt tainted, haunted by the echoes of the past. But we stayed, partly because we had nowhere else to go, but also because it felt like we owed it to Sarah, to uncover the truth, to bring her story to light after so many years of silence. I don't know if we'll ever know exactly what happened to Sarah Milligan, but I do know that her story and the secrets of this farm are now a part of our lives, and somehow we'll find a way to live with that, to honor her memory while building our own future on this land. Every time I pick up a shovel now, I can't help but wonder, what other secrets might be buried beneath our feet? And are some things better left undiscovered? The first time I saw the blue sedan, I thought nothing of it. By the third time, my palms were sweating on the steering wheel. By the fifth, I was fighting the urge to scream. It had started as a fun road trip, a chance for Emily and me to reconnect after a rough patch in our relationship. We'd planned a route from New York to California, mapping out quirky roadside attractions and scenic viewpoints along the way. But 3 days in, our carefree adventure had turned into a waking nightmare. We'd stopped for gas just outside of Chicago when I first noticed the car. It was a nondescript blue sedan, probably a Toyota or Honda, with tinted windows that made it impossible to see the driver. As I filled up our tank, I saw it pull into the pump across from us. Nothing unusual about that. But then we stopped for lunch 2 hours later at a diner in the middle of nowhere, and there it was again, parked a few spaces down. I nudged Emily, nodding towards the car. Is it just me? Or did we see that same car at the gas station? She squinted, then shrugged. Maybe. It's a pretty common car, though. Probably just a coincidence. I tried to believe her, but a nagging feeling had taken root in my gut. As we ate our burgers, I kept glancing out the window, half expecting to see someone watching us. But the car just sat there, silent and empty. We hit the road again, and for a while I managed to relax. We sang along to our road trip playlist, played silly car games, and marveled at the changing landscape as we pushed west. But as the sun began to set, and we pulled into a small town to find a motel for the night, my blood ran cold. There, in the parking lot of the only motel in town, was the blue sedan. "Em," I said, my voice tight. "Look." She followed my gaze, and I saw the moment realization dawned on her face. "Okay, that's a little weird," she admitted. We checked in quickly, hurrying to our room with our bags. I double-checked the lock on the door, then peered out through the curtains. The blue car was still there, its windows reflecting the neon glow of the motel sign. "Should we call the police?" Emily asked, her voice small. I hesitated. "And tell them what? That we've seen the same car 3 times in one day? They'll think we're paranoid." We spent a restless night, taking turns to keep watch. But nothing happened. When morning came, the blue car was gone. I wanted to believe it was over, that maybe we really had just been paranoid. But as we merged onto the highway, my heart sank. There, a few cars behind us, was the familiar blue shape. "We need to lose them," I said, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Emily nodded, her face pale. "How?" I took the next exit abruptly, earning a chorus of honks from other drivers. The blue car followed. I turned down side streets randomly, trying to be unpredictable. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of our pursuer in the rearview mirror, sometimes not. But they always reappeared. After an hour of this cat-and-mouse game, we found ourselves on a lonely stretch of country road, fields of corn stretched out on either side, broken only by the occasional farmhouse or barn. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, I saw something that made my heart leap into my throat. Up ahead, an old barn loomed by the roadside, its faded red paint peeling in the sun. And parked behind it, just visible, was a blue sedan. "They're waiting for us," I whispered. Emily's eyes widened in fear. "Turn around, now!" I slammed on the brakes, ready to spin the car around, but it was too late. The blue sedan pulled out from behind the barn, blocking the road ahead. At the same moment, I saw another car appear in my rearview mirror, cutting off our retreat. We were trapped. Time seemed to slow down as the driver's door of the blue sedan opened. A figure stepped out, and I felt the world tilt on its axis. "No," Emily breathed beside me. "It can't be." But it was. Walking towards our car, a grim smile on his face, was Emily's ex-boyfriend, Mark. Memories flooded back, memories I'd tried to suppress. Emily showing up at my apartment 6 months ago, bruised and terrified. Her tearful confession about Mark's possessive behavior, his violent outbursts, the restraining order we'd helped her get, the weeks of looking over our shoulders, jumping at every sound. We thought it was over. We thought we were safe. Mark approached the driver's side window. I hit the lock button, for all the good it would do. He leaned down, his face inches from the glass. "Long time no see," he said, his voice muffled but still chilling. "Did you really think you could just run away?" Emily was frozen beside me, her face a mask of terror. I reached for her hand, squeezing it tight. "What do you want, Mark?" I called through the glass, trying to keep my voice steady. His smile widened, showing too many teeth. "I want what's mine," he said, his eyes fixed on Emily. "She's not yours," I spat. "She never was." His face darkened. "You don't know anything about us, about what we had." "I know enough," I said. "I know you're breaking the restraining order just by being here." He laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "You think I care about some piece of paper? You think that can keep me away from her?" I felt Emily trembling beside me. I had to do something, had to get us out of this. But how? That's when I noticed something. The car behind us, the one that had been following us earlier, wasn't one I recognized. And the driver looked uncertain. A plan began to form in my mind. A desperate, possibly stupid plan. But it was all we had. "Emily," I whispered, not taking my eyes off Mark. "When I say go, I need you to duck down. Can you do that?" She nodded, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. I took a deep breath. Then, in one swift motion, I turned the key in the ignition and slammed the car into reverse. "Go!" I yelled. Emily ducked. I floored it. Our car shot backward, straight towards the vehicle behind us. At the last second, I saw the driver's eyes widen in panic. They swerved, just barely avoiding a collision. Mark shouted in anger, running towards us, but I was already shifting into drive, cutting the wheel hard. We fishtailed onto the shoulder, kicking up a cloud of dust and gravel. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought we might flip. But then the tires caught, and we shot forward. I didn't look back. I just drove, pushing our car to its limits. Emily sat up slowly, her face pale. "Are they following us?" I asked, not daring to take my eyes off the road. She turned in her seat, peering out the back window. I don't think so. I can't see them. I didn't slow down. We drove for hours, taking random turns, avoiding main roads. Every car we saw made us flinch. Every time we had to stop for gas, we scanned the area obsessively. It was well past midnight when we finally felt safe enough to stop. We found a small motel in a town we'd never heard of, paid cash for a room, and collapsed onto the bed, exhausted and shell-shocked. "How did he find us?" Emily whispered into the darkness. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "I don't know. Maybe he hacked your phone or something. We'll get new ones tomorrow." She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm so sorry," she said finally, her voice breaking. "This is all my fault. I've ruined everything." I turned to her, pulling her close. "Hey, no, this is not your fault. None of this is your fault. It's all on him." She buried her face in my shoulder, her body shaking with silent sobs. I held her, my mind racing. What were we going to do now? We couldn't go home. Mark knew where we lived, where we worked. We couldn't continue our trip. He'd been able to follow us this far. Who knew how long he could keep it up? As the first light of dawn began to seep through the curtains, I made a decision. "We're going to disappear," I said. Emily looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. "What do you mean?" "I mean we're going to become different people. New names, new identities. We'll go somewhere he'd never think to look." It sounded crazy, even as I said it. But what choice did we have? Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said, "let's do it." And so, as the sun rose on a new day, we began planning our vanishing act. Our road trip had become an escape route, leading us not to California, but to a new life entirely. I don't know if we'll ever truly be free of Mark. I don't know if we'll ever stop looking over our shoulders. But I do know this. We're in this together, and together, we'll find a way to survive. The open road stretches out before us, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. We drive on into an uncertain future, leaving the past in our rearview mirror. For now, at least, we're free. The last time I saw Eliza Thompson, she was laughing. It's an image seared into my memory. Her head thrown back, long dark hair catching the golden light of the sunset. The sound of her joy carried away by the sea breeze. I didn't know then that it would be the last time I'd ever see her, that in less than 12 hours, she would vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but questions and a growing sense of dread that threatened to swallow us all. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is Michael Chen, and I was a security officer aboard the Emerald Princess, a luxury cruise ship making its way through the Caribbean. It was my third year on the job, and I thought I'd seen it all. Drunken brawls, petty theft, the occasional medical emergency. Nothing I couldn't handle. But Eliza's disappearance, that was something else entirely. It started like any other day at sea. I began my shift at 6 a.m., making my rounds through the ship's corridors and public areas. Everything was quiet, most passengers still asleep in their cabins. As I passed by the ship's grand atrium, I nodded to Eliza, who was just finishing up her night shift at the reception desk. "Morning, Michael," she said, stifling a yawn. "Anything exciting planned for today?" I shrugged. "Just the usual. You should get some rest. You look beat." She laughed, gathering her things. "Oh, I will. But first, I'm going to watch the sunrise from my favorite spot on the upper deck. Want to join me?" I hesitated. I was on duty, but it was a quiet morning. "Sure, why not? I could use some fresh air." We made our way to a secluded spot on deck 16, leaning against the railing as the sky slowly lightened. Eliza closed her eyes, breathing in the salty air. "I love this," she said softly. "No matter how many cruises I work, this never gets old." I watched her out of the corner of my eye, struck by how peaceful she looked. We'd become friends over the past few months, sharing meals in the crew mess and swapping stories during our off hours. But in that moment, I realized there was still so much I didn't know about her. "How long have you been working on cruise ships?" I asked. She opened her eyes, a wistful smile playing on her lips. 5 years now. It was supposed to be just a gap year thing after college, but I fell in love with it. The travel, the people, the sense of adventure. I nodded, understanding completely. It was why I'd stayed with this job too, despite the long hours and time away from home. We chatted for a while longer as the sun crept above the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Finally, Eliza yawned again. "I should really get some sleep," she said. "Thanks for the company, Michael. See you later." I nodded, watching as she walked away. It was the last time I would see her alive. The rest of my shift passed uneventfully. It wasn't until that evening, during the nightly staff meeting, that I realized something was wrong. Eliza wasn't there. "Has anyone seen Thompson?" Our supervisor, Rita, asked, frowning at her clipboard. She was supposed to start her shift an hour ago. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the room. It wasn't like Eliza to be late, let alone miss a shift entirely. "I saw her this morning," I offered. She was heading to her cabin to sleep after the night shift. Rita's frown deepened. "Can you go check on her? Make sure she's all right?" I nodded, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach as I made my way to the crew quarters. I knocked on Eliza's door, calling her name. No response. I used my master key to enter, half expecting to find her sound asleep. The cabin was empty. The bed was made, looking like it hadn't been slept in. Eliza's uniform for the evening shift was laid out neatly on a chair. Her phone was on the nightstand, its screen dark. I radioed Rita. "She's not here. The cabin looks untouched since this morning." There was a long pause before Rita responded. "Initiate search protocol. Now." The next few hours were a blur of activity. We combed every inch of the ship, from the engine room to the uppermost decks. We reviewed security footage, interviewed crew members and passengers, but there was no sign of Eliza. The last confirmed sighting of her was on the security camera outside her cabin at 7:12 a.m. The footage showed her entering her room, closing the door behind her, and then nothing. No footage of her leaving, no sign of disturbance. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. As the night wore on and our search turned up nothing, the atmosphere on the ship grew tense. Passengers began to notice the increased security presence, whispering among themselves. Rumors started to spread. By morning, we had to face facts. We had a missing person on our hands. The captain made an announcement, asking for any information about Eliza's whereabouts. Her picture was displayed on screens throughout the ship. We contacted the nearest port authorities and the cruise line's head office. A Coast Guard search was initiated, though we all knew the chances of finding someone in the vast expanse of the Caribbean were slim to none. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was somehow responsible. If only I'd walked her to her cabin that morning. If only I'd checked on her sooner. The image of her laughing in the sunrise haunted me. As the investigation ramped up, I found myself recounting every detail of my last interaction with Eliza to a stern-faced detective from the ship's security team. "Did she seem nervous? Distracted? Did she mention any plans for the day?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, she seemed happy, relaxed. She was looking forward to getting some sleep." The detective's eyes narrowed. "And you're sure she went into her cabin?" "Yes," I said, for what felt like the 100th time. "The security footage confirms it." He nodded, making a note in his file. "And there's no way she could have left without being seen on camera?" I hesitated. It shouldn't be possible. The corridor outside the crew cabins is monitored 24/7. But as I said it, a chill ran down my spine. Because if it wasn't possible, then how had it happened? Days passed, and the mystery only deepened. Eliza's cabin was thoroughly searched, revealing nothing out of the ordinary. Her passport, wallet, and all personal belongings were accounted for. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play. Theories abounded among the crew and passengers alike. Some believed she had somehow fallen overboard, though how she could have done so without anyone noticing was unclear. Others whispered about suicide, but those who knew Eliza dismissed this outright. She had been happy, with no signs of depression or distress. The most disturbing theory, the one that kept me awake at night, was that someone on the ship was responsible for her disappearance. The thought that one of our passengers or crew members could be a killer walking among us was almost too horrifying to contemplate. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation hit dead end after dead end. The ship completed its scheduled cruise and returned to Porty, where more intensive forensic work could be done. But even with the full resources of law enforcement brought to bear, no new leads emerged. Eliza's family flew in, their faces drawn with worry and grief. I watched from a distance as they were briefed by the investigators, saw the mother collapse into sobs as the reality of the situation sunk in. I wanted to approach them, to offer some words of comfort, but what could I possibly say? In the end, the Emerald Princess set sail again with a new crew member taking Eliza's place at the reception desk. Life on board returned to normal, or a semblance of it. But for those of us who had known her, who had searched for her, who had been left behind with nothing but questions, things would never be the same. I stayed on with the cruise line, unable to leave while Eliza's fate remained unknown. Each new port brought a flicker of hope that some clue would surface, that someone somewhere might have seen something. But as months passed with no new information, that hope began to fade. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I find myself on deck 16, staring out at the endless expanse of the sea. I think about Eliza, about her laugh, about the way she loved watching the sunrise. I wonder where she is, if she's still out there somewhere. And I can't help but feel that the ocean knows the truth, holding its secrets in its unfathomable depths. The disappearance of Eliza Thompson remains an unsolved mystery, a ghost story whispered among cruise ship crews. For me, it's a constant reminder of how fragile our sense of security can be, how easily a life can vanish without a trace. And every time I see a passenger enter their cabin, every time I watch a security camera feed, I can't help but wonder, could it happen again? In this floating city of steel and glass, surrounded by the vast, indifferent sea, are any of us truly safe? The Emerald Princess sails on, carrying its cargo of vacationers and secrets. And somewhere out there, perhaps Eliza is still laughing, her voice carried away by the endless ocean breeze. The first slash in the tent canvas was so perfect, so surgical, it almost looked deliberate. I traced my finger along the edge, feeling the frayed nylon threads. Whatever had done this wasn't just sharp, it was wickedly so. And as the fading daylight filtered through that precise cut, casting long shadows across the abandoned campsite, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd stumbled into something far more sinister than a bear attack. My name's Alex, and I've been hiking the Appalachian Trail with my best friend Jamie for the past month. We're experienced backpackers, used to the challenges of long-distance trekking, but nothing in our years of outdoor adventures could have prepared us for what we found in that secluded clearing, deep in the heart of the Georgia wilderness. The day had started like any other on the trail. We'd broken camp at dawn, hoping to cover a good 15 miles before nightfall. The weather was perfect, cool and crisp, with just enough breeze to keep the bugs at bay. We'd made good time, pausing only for a quick lunch and the occasional water break. It was late afternoon when Jamie spotted the first sign that something was off. "Hey, Alex," he called, pointing to a tree just off the trail. "Check this out." I walked over, squinting at the trunk. There, carved deep into the bark, was a crude symbol, a circle with a jagged line through it. The cuts looked fresh, the exposed wood still oozing sap. "Weird," I muttered. "Never seen a trail marker like that before." Jamie shrugged. "Probably just some kid messing around." We pressed on. but I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. The forest seemed quieter than usual, the usual chorus of birdsong and insect buzz oddly muted, and I could have sworn I caught glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, always just out of sight when I turned to look. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, we started looking for a suitable campsite. That's when we saw the clearing. It was perfect. A small, level area nestled between two rocky outcroppings, with a babbling stream nearby. But as we approached, we realized we weren't the first to discover this idyllic spot. The remains of a campsite lay before us, looking for all the world like its occupants had vanished in the middle of their stay. A tent stood in the center, its door flap open and swaying gently in the breeze. A small cooking pot sat on a makeshift fire pit, the ashes long cold. Backpacks and sleeping bags were scattered around, as if their owners had fled in a hurry. Jamie and I exchanged glances. This wasn't normal. Even the messiest campers usually packed up before moving on. "Hello," Jamie called out. "Anyone here?" His voice echoed through the clearing, met only by the soft gurgle of the stream and the rustle of leaves overhead. We approached cautiously. That's when I noticed the first slash in the tent, and then another, and another. The entire structure was riddled with them, each cut precise and deliberate. "What the hell?" I breathed, peering inside the ruined shelter. The interior was a mess. Sleeping bags were shredded, clothes strewn about. A flashlight lay on its side, its beam creating eerie shadows as it illuminated a small notebook. I picked it up, flipping it open to the last entry. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. "Day 3, it's still out there. We can hear it moving around the camp at night. The others think I'm crazy, but I know what I saw. It's not a bear. It's not anything natural. God help us if it gets in." I showed the notebook to Jamie, watching as the color drained from his face. "We should go," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now." But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. There, half hidden beneath a torn sleeping bag, was a camera. My hands shook as I picked it up, praying the battery wasn't dead. It wasn't. The screen flickered to life, showing the last image taken. My heart nearly stopped. The photo was dark, clearly taken at night. But there, just at the edge of the frame, illuminated by the flash, was something, a shape that was almost human, but not quite. Long, spindly limbs, a face that was more shadow than substance, and eyes that reflected the camera's flash like a cat's, but far larger. I dropped the camera, stumbling backwards. "We need to leave. Now." But as I turned, I realized with horror that the sun had nearly set. The forest around us was deepening into twilight, shadows lengthening and merging into an impenetrable gloom. Jamie was already gathering his pack. "We can make it back to the trail if we hurry," he said, his voice tense. "We'll hike through the night if we have to." I nodded, snatching up my own backpack. But as I turned to go, a glint of metal caught my eye. There, half buried in the soft earth near the fire pit, was a small silver locket. Without thinking, I scooped it up and shoved it in my pocket. We set off at a brisk pace, trying to retrace our steps in the fading light, but nothing looked familiar. The trees seemed to press in closer, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. More than once, I could have sworn I heard something moving in the underbrush, always just out of sight. "Do you remember that weird symbol we saw earlier?" Jamie panted as we pushed through a particularly dense thicket. "I think I see another one." He was right. There, carved into a massive oak, was the same circle and line symbol we'd spotted before. But this one looked older, the edges of the carving weathered and moss-grown. "It's probably just a coincidence," I said, not believing my own words. "Hey, come on, we need to keep moving." But as we pressed on, more symbols appeared. Some were fresh, others ancient. They seemed to be guiding us, though to what, I couldn't say. The darkness was nearly complete now. our headlamps creating small islands of light in a sea of blackness. The forest had gone completely silent, save for the crunch of our boots on fallen leaves and the increasingly ragged sound of our breathing. That's when we heard it. A low, guttural sound, somewhere between a growl and a moan. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Jamie froze. What was that? I shook my head, unable to speak. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew that panicking now would only get us more lost. We pushed on, moving as quietly as we could, but the sounds continued, growing closer. Branches snapped behind us. Something rustled in the canopy overhead. And then, just ahead, I saw a flicker of movement. A shape, tall and impossibly thin, slipped between two trees. In the brief flash of my headlamp, I caught a glimpse of pale, elongated limbs, and a face that was little more than a dark void with pinpricks of reflected light where eyes should be. "Run!" I yelled, all thought of stealth forgotten. We crashed through the undergrowth, blind panic driving us forward. Branches whipped at our faces. Roots threatened to trip us at every step. The sounds behind us grew louder, a cacophony of inhuman shrieks and growls. I don't know how long we ran. It could have been minutes or hours, but suddenly, miraculously, we burst out onto a wide, gravel road. A park ranger station stood just ahead, its windows glowing with welcoming light. We staggered towards it, gasping for breath. As we reached the door, I chanced to look back at the forest we'd just escaped. There, at the edge of the trees, stood a figure, tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It raised a hand, more claw than human appendage, and for a moment, I thought it would pursue us into the light. But then it turned, melting back into the shadows of the forest. In seconds, it was gone, leaving no trace of its presence. The rangers were skeptical of our story, of course. They attributed our experience to exhaustion, dehydration, and an overactive imagination. But they did send out a search party to investigate the abandoned campsite. They found nothing. No slashed tent, no scattered gear, not even a trace of a campfire. It was as if the entire scene had vanished into thin air. In the days that followed, as Jamie and I recovered in a nearby town, I thought often of that silver locket I'd pocketed in my panic. When I finally worked up the courage to open it, I found a small photo inside. A smiling family, mother, father, 2 kids, posed in front of a familiar-looking clearing. I never reported finding the locket. Some part of me knew that doing so would only lead to more questions. Questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Jamie and I never finished our hike. By unspoken agreement, we packed up and headed home. Our adventure on the Appalachian Trail cut short. We don't talk much about what happened in those woods, but sometimes, on dark nights when the wind whispers through the trees, I find myself thinking about that abandoned campsite, about the thing we saw in the forest, and I wonder, with a chill that goes bone deep, if somewhere out there, in the deepest, darkest parts of the wilderness, it's thinking about us too. The scream that tore through the cab of my truck that night wasn't human. It couldn't have been. No person could make a sound like that. Raw, primal, and filled with a terror so deep it made my blood run cold. But it came from the man sitting next to me, the hitchhiker I'd picked up just an hour before. And as his eyes flew open, reflecting the dashboard lights like some wild animals, I knew with sickening certainty that whatever had just happened, whatever he'd seen in his dreams, was far from over. My name's Jack, and I've been driving big rigs across the country for the better part of 2 decades. I've seen my fair share of weird stuff out on the lonely highways, ghost lights, inexplicable weather, even the occasional UFO if you catch me after a few beers. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for what happened on that moonless night in the middle of nowhere, Nevada. It had started as a routine haul, Phoenix to Seattle with a trailer full of electronics. I was making good time, the miles melting away under my wheels as I cruised through the desert night. The radio kept me company, a mix of old country tunes and late-night talk shows about conspiracy theories and alien abductions. I was about halfway through Nevada when I saw him. A lone figure standing by the side of the road, thumb out. Now, I'm not usually one for picking up hitchhikers. Too many horror stories, too many risks. But something about this guy made me slow down. Maybe it was the lost look in his eyes, or the way he hugged himself against the chill desert wind. Whatever it was, before I knew it, I was pulling over. "Where you headed?" I called out as he approached. "Anywhere but here," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. I should have driven off right then, but instead, I found myself saying, "Hop in. I'm going to Seattle if that works for you." He climbed into the passenger seat, bringing with him the smell of dust and something else, something I couldn't quite place. Up close, he looked young, maybe mid-20s, with shaggy brown hair and eyes that seemed to dart nervously around the cab. "I'm Jack," I said, pulling back onto the highway. "Mike," he replied, not meeting my gaze. "Thanks for the ride." We drove in silence for a while, the only sound the rumble of the engine and the whisper of tires on asphalt. I tried to make conversation a few times, but Mike's responses were monosyllabic at best. Eventually, I gave up, focusing on the road ahead. It was about an hour later when I noticed Mike had fallen asleep, his head lolling against the window. I turned the radio down a notch, not wanting to disturb him. That's when things started to get weird. It began with a twitch, just a small movement of his hand. Then his breathing changed, becoming rapid and shallow. His eyes started moving frantically behind closed lids, like he was in the depths of some intense dream. I was just about to wake him, worried he might be having some kind of fit, when he started muttering. At first, it was too low to make out, but it quickly grew louder. No, please, don't let it find me." A chill ran down my spine. His voice was filled with pure, unadulterated fear. "Hey, buddy," I said, reaching out to shake his shoulder. "Wake up, you're having a nightmare." But he didn't wake. Instead, his muttering grew more frantic, his body starting to thrash in the seat. "It's coming. Oh God, it's coming. Can't you see it? Can't you see its eyes?" And that's when he let out that scream, the one that made me nearly drive off the road. His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused, reflecting the green glow of the dashboard like some nocturnal animal. I managed to pull over, my heart pounding in my chest. Mike, snap out of it." He turned to look at me, but his eyes seemed to be seeing something else, something beyond me. "It followed me," he whispered, his voice hoarse from screaming. "Oh God, Jack, it followed me into the truck." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "What followed you?" "Mike, there's nothing here but us." He shook his head violently. "You can't see it, but it's here. It's always here." His eyes darted around the cab, following something invisible. "We have to get out. Now." Before I could stop him, he'd thrown open the passenger door and leapt out into the night. I cursed, fumbling with my seatbelt before following him. The desert night was cold and still, the only sound the tick of the cooling engine and Mike's ragged breathing. He stood a few feet from the truck, arms wrapped around himself, shaking like a leaf. "Mike," I said, approaching him slowly like you would a spooked animal. "What's going on? What do you think is following you?" He turned to me, his face pale in the truck's headlights. "I don't know what it is, but it's been after me for days. Ever since I found that thing in the desert." "What thing?" I asked, a sick feeling growing in my gut. Mike reached into his pocket with a shaking hand, pulling out what looked like a small stone. But as he held it up, I realized it wasn't a stone at all. It was some kind of artifact, carved with intricate symbols I'd never seen before. In the harsh glare of the headlights, it seemed to shimmer and shift, as if the symbols were moving. "I found this out there," Mike said, gesturing vaguely at the dark expanse of desert around us. "In some kind of old ruin. I thought it might be worth something." He laughed bitterly. "I didn't know. I didn't know it would wake it up. Wake what up? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Mike's eyes met mine, filled with a terror that made my blood run cold. The thing that lives in the spaces between, the thing that hunts in dreams, it wants this back. He held up the artifact, and it wants me for taking it. I wanted to tell him he was crazy, that he just had a nightmare, that there was no monster hunting him. But the conviction in his voice, the raw fear in his eyes, it was impossible to dismiss. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Okay, so why don't we just give it back, throw that thing away and be done with it? Mike shook his head frantically. I've tried. It doesn't work like that. It's like it's attached to me now. The only way to get rid of it is to pass it on to someone else, to make them take it. A chill ran down my spine as I realized what he was saying. That's why you were hitchhiking. You were trying to give it to someone else. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to, but I can't take it anymore. The dreams, the visions, it's driving me insane. I took a step back, suddenly very aware of how isolated we were out here in the desert night. Mike, I can't. I won't take that thing. Please, he begged, holding out the artifact. Please, I can't do this anymore. Just take it. You'll see. You'll understand. For a moment, I was tempted. The artifact seemed to call to me, the symbols swirling in a mesmerizing dance. But then I shook my head, snapping out of it. No, I said firmly. I won't do it, Mike, but I'll help you. We'll figure this out together, okay? There's got to be a way to get rid of that thing without passing it on. Mike stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he whispered. Okay, we'll try. We got back in the truck, the artifact safely wrapped in a cloth and stowed in the glove compartment. As we pulled back onto the highway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The night seemed darker, the shadows deeper, and more than once, I could have sworn I saw something moving just at the edge of my headlights, something tall and thin with too many limbs. I don't know what happened to Mike after I dropped him off in Reno. He said he was going to find an expert, someone who could help him get rid of the artifact for good. I gave him my number, made him promise to call and let me know he was okay. It's been 3 months and I haven't heard from him. Sometimes, on long night drives through the desert, I find myself scanning the side of the road, half expecting to see him standing there, thumb out. And sometimes, in the moments between sleeping and waking, I see shapes in the shadows of my room. Tall, twisted shapes with too many eyes. I tell myself it's just my imagination, just the lingering effects of that strange night. But deep down, I know the truth. Whatever was hunting Mike that night, whatever lived in his dreams, it's out there still, waiting, watching. And sometimes, when the night is darkest and the road stretches endlessly before me, I can't shake the feeling that it's watching me too. The leather-bound journal fell open in my hands, its yellowed pages releasing a musty cloud of dust and decay. At first, I thought it was just another relic of the farm's long history, maybe a record of crop yields or livestock lineages. But as my eyes skimmed the faded, spidery handwriting, my heart began to race. This was no ordinary farm ledger. The words human subject and genetic manipulation leapt out at me, and I realized with growing horror that I'd stumbled upon something far darker than I could have imagined. Little did I know, this discovery would plunge me into a nightmare that would make me question everything I thought I knew about the quiet, rural world around me. My name's Sam, and I'd only been working at Willow Creek Farm for about a month when I found the journal. Fresh out of college with an agriculture degree and dreams of someday owning my own farm, I jumped at the chance to work as a farmhand for old Mr. Harrison. The pay wasn't great, but the experience was invaluable, and there was something charming about the sprawling, slightly run-down property with its weathered barns and endless fields. Mr. Harrison was a quiet man, gruff but fair. He lived alone in the big farmhouse, his wife long dead and his children moved away to the city. He didn't talk much about the farm's history, just gave me my daily tasks and left me to it. I spent my days mending fences, tending to the small herd of cattle, and helping to plant and harvest the crops. It was a hot, sticky afternoon in late July when Mr. Harrison asked me to clear out one of the old barns. "Been meaning to do it for years," he'd grumbled. "Might as well put you to use on it, just pile up anything that looks worth keeping, haul the rest to the burn pile." The barn was a cavernous structure, its interior dim and cool compared to the sweltering heat outside. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that streamed through gaps in the weathered boards. The air was thick with the smell of old hay and something else, something chemical that I couldn't quite place. I started in one corner, sorting through piles of rusted farm equipment, moldering sacks of feed, and broken furniture. It was monotonous work, and my mind wandered as I hauled item after item to the growing pile outside. That's when I noticed the loose floorboard. I might have missed it entirely if my boot hadn't caught on the edge, nearly sending me sprawling. Curious, I knelt down to examine it. The board shifted easily under my hands, and as I lifted it, I saw a small space underneath, just big enough to hide something. The journal was wrapped in oilcloth, surprisingly well preserved considering its hiding place. I pulled it out, glancing over my shoulder guiltily, though I knew Mr. Harrison was off in the fields. It felt invasive, reading someone else's private thoughts, but my curiosity got the better of me. As I began to read, that curiosity quickly turned to confusion, then to horror. The journal belonged to a Dr. Elliot Harrison, dated 1954. Mr. Harrison's father, I realized. But this was no ordinary farmer. The pages detailed complex scientific experiments, far beyond anything I'd learned in my agriculture courses. Dr. Harrison wrote about his attempts to create hardier, more productive livestock through genetic manipulation. But it wasn't just animals he was experimenting on. There were detailed notes about human subjects, vague references to volunteers from the local asylum. My hands shook as I turned the pages. Descriptions of failed experiments, of creatures that were neither fully human nor fully animal. Sketches that turned my stomach. And throughout it all, a growing sense of the doctor's obsession, his conviction that he was on the verge of a breakthrough that would revolutionize agriculture and change the world. The final entry, dated 1963, was different. The handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. "It's done. The experiment was a success, but at what cost? They're out there now, hiding in the woods, in the fields. I can hear them at night, scratching at the walls. God forgive me for what I've created." I snapped the journal shut, my heart pounding. Hey, this had to be some kind of sick joke, right? Or maybe the ramblings of a madman. There was no way any of this could be real. But even as I tried to rationalize it, memories of odd occurrences around the farm began to surface. The strange noises I'd heard at night, dismissed as wildlife. The areas of the property Mr. Harrison had warned me to avoid. The way the cattle sometimes seemed spooked by something I couldn't see. I shoved the journal back into its hiding place, my mind reeling. I needed to get out of this barn to get some fresh air and clear my head. As I stepped outside, blinking in the harsh sunlight, I nearly ran into Mr. Harrison. "Making progress?" he asked, eyeing the pile of junk I'd accumulated. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Did he know about the journal? About what his father had done? Mr. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly, as if sensing my unease. "Everything all right, Sam? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed to say. "Just, it's hot in there. Needed some air." He nodded slowly. "Well, don't work too hard. Come on up to the house when you're done. I'll fix us some dinner." I watched him walk away, trying to reconcile the kind, if gruff, old man I knew with the dark history I'd just uncovered. Was he continuing his father's work? Or was he just as much a victim of it as anyone else? That night, as I lay in bed in the small apartment above the garage that Mr. Harrison had given me, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the old building, every rustle from the fields outside, set my nerves on edge. I kept thinking about the journal, about the creatures Dr. Harrison had written about. Were they still out there, after all these years? A sudden noise outside my window made me bolt upright. It was a strange, guttural sound, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. My heart pounding, I crept to the window and peered out into the darkness. At first, I saw nothing, but then, movement caught my eye. Something was moving in the field beyond the barn, something large, and definitely not a cow. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, and then it turned, and I caught a glimpse of its face in the moonlight. I stumbled back from the window, biting back a scream. What I'd seen, it wasn't human, but it wasn't fully animal either. It was something in between, something that should not exist. I spent the rest of the night huddled in my bed, every muscle tense, listening to the sounds of movement outside. When dawn finally broke, I was exhausted but relieved. Surely, in the light of day, everything would make sense again. But as the days passed, strange occurrences began to multiply. Tools would go missing, only to turn up in odd places. The cattle grew increasingly agitated, especially at night. And more than once, I caught Mr. Harrison staring off into the woods with a troubled expression. I thought about leaving, about packing up my things and getting as far away from Willow Creek Farm as I could. But something held me back. Curiosity, maybe, or a sense of responsibility. Whatever Dr. Harrison had done, whatever he'd created, it was still out there. And maybe, just maybe, there was something I could do about it. I began my own investigations, carefully at first. I reread the journal, making notes, trying to understand the science behind Dr. Harrison's experiments. I explored the far reaches of the property, areas Mr. Harrison had told me to avoid, looking for signs of the creatures. And slowly, I started to piece together the truth. The experiments hadn't ended with Dr. Harrison's last journal entry. They'd continued, passed down from father to son. Mr. Harrison wasn't just aware of what his father had done, he was trying to fix it. It all came to a head one stormy night in late August. I was awakened by the sound of breaking glass and Mr. Harrison's shouts. I raced to the farmhouse, rain lashing at my face, to find the front door splintered and hanging off its hinges. Inside, the scene was chaos. Furniture overturned, claw marks scoring the walls. And there, in the center of the living room, stood Mr. Harrison, facing off against a creature that defied description. Part human, part animal, its body a patchwork of mismatched parts, its eyes glowing with an unnatural intelligence. "Sam!" Mr. Harrison yelled when he saw me. "The syringe! On the mantel!" I saw it then, a large syringe filled with a glowing blue liquid. Without thinking, I grabbed it and tossed it to Mr. Harrison. In one smooth motion, he caught it and plunged it into the creature's neck. The thing let out a howl that made my blood run cold. It thrashed wildly for a moment, then collapsed to the floor, its body seeming to melt and reform before my eyes. In moments, all that was left was an unconscious, very human-looking man. Mr. Harrison sank to his knees, his face a mask of exhaustion and relief. "It's over," he murmured. "It's finally over." In the days that followed, Mr. Harrison told me everything. How his father's experiments had created a handful of hybrid creatures, how they'd hidden in the woods for decades, occasionally venturing out to terrorize the farm. How he'd spent his life trying to find a cure, a way to reverse what his father had done. The man we'd captured that night was the last of them. With him cured, the long nightmare was finally over. But the weight of it, the dark legacy of Willow Creek Farm, would stay with me forever. I still work the farm with Mr. Harrison. We never spoke of that night to anyone else. Who would believe us? But sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind whispers through the cornfields, I find myself scanning the tree line, wondering if we truly found them all. And I can't help but think about the thin line between scientific progress and playing God, and how easy it is to cross that line with the best of intentions. The secrets of Willow Creek Farm are buried now, as they should be. But the lessons about responsibility, about the unforeseen consequences of our actions, those will stay with me always. And I'll never look at a quiet, rural farm quite the same way again. The footprints ended abruptly in the middle of the field, as if their owner had simply vanished into thin air. I stood there, flashlight in hand, my mind struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. 20 years on the force, and I'd never encountered anything like this. The car was still running, keys in the ignition, the driver's personal belongings untouched. It was as if the driver had stepped out for a moment and just disappeared. Little did I know, this seemingly routine call would lead me down a rabbit hole of inexplicable events and unsolved mysteries that would haunt me for years to come. My name's Sarah Jennings, and I've been a state trooper in Nevada for 2 decades. I thought I'd seen it all: high-speed chases, horrific accidents, even the occasional UFO report from some poor soul who'd been out in the desert heat too long. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened that night on a lonely stretch of Highway 50, deep in the heart of what locals call the loneliest road in America. It started as a typical night shift. I was cruising along the highway, more tumbleweed than traffic keeping me company, when the call came in. A passing motorist had reported an abandoned vehicle on the side of the road, hazard lights blinking. Standard procedure: I'd check it out, call a tow if necessary, and be on my way. As I pulled up behind the vehicle, a late model sedan, nothing remarkable about it, I noticed something odd. The engine was still running. I approached cautiously, one hand on my holster out of habit. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, but there was no sign of the driver. I shone my flashlight into the interior. Everything looked normal. A half-empty water bottle in the cup holder, a phone charging on the dashboard, a duffel bag in the back seat. No signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing to indicate foul play. "Hello?" I called out, sweeping my flashlight across the surrounding area. "Anyone there? Highway patrol." Only the whisper of the desert wind answered me. That's when I noticed the footprints, a single set, leading away from the driver's side door into the field adjacent to the highway. They were clear and purposeful, not the staggering tracks of someone injured or disoriented. I radioed in my situation and began to follow the prints. The field was mostly bare, scrub brush and hard-packed earth. Easy to see the trail in the beam of my flashlight. I expected to find the driver relieving themselves behind a bush, or maybe having wandered off in confusion. Instead, I found nothing. The footprints stopped abruptly, about 50 yards into the field. One moment they were there, clear as day, and the next, nothing. Just undisturbed earth stretching out into the darkness. I stood there for a long moment, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. People don't just vanish. There had to be an explanation. I searched the area thoroughly, widening my circle, looking for any sign of disturbance. Nothing. No scuff marks to indicate someone had jumped or been lifted. No signs of a struggle. Just those footprints, ending in the middle of nowhere. By the time backup arrived, I was sweating despite the cool night air. My colleague, Mike, took one look at my face and knew something was off. "What have we got, Sarah?" he asked, his hand instinctively moving to his holster. I explained the situation, showing him the car, the footprints, the impossible ending. He followed me out into the field, his own bewilderment growing with each step. "This is weird," he said finally, standing at the end of the trail. "Really weird. We called in forensics, had the area cordoned off. The next few hours were a blur of activity, photographing the scene, taking casts of the footprints, searching the vehicle. The driver was identified as one David Chen, 37, a software engineer from San Francisco. His family was contacted. No, they hadn't heard from him. Yes, he was driving to visit them in Denver. No, he had no history of mental illness or erratic behavior. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across the field, we were no closer to an explanation. David Chen had simply vanished, leaving behind a running car and a set of footprints that led nowhere. In the days that followed, the investigation intensified. Search parties combed the area. Helicopters with thermal imaging scanned for miles around. David's phone records, bank statements, and internet history were scrutinized. Missing persons bulletins were issued across multiple states. Nothing. Not a single clue as to what had happened to David Chen. Theories abounded, each more outlandish than the last. Some suggested he'd been abducted by criminals, by a cult, by aliens. Others proposed he'd staged his own disappearance. There was talk of secret government experiments, of portals to other dimensions. I tried to stay grounded, to focus on the facts. But the more I dug into the case, the stranger things became. A week after David's disappearance, I received an anonymous tip. The caller, a trembling voice disguised by some kind of modulator, told me to look into something called the Highway of Tears. At first, I dismissed it as another crackpot lead, but something about the caller's urgency stuck with me. That night, unable to sleep, I started researching. What I found chilled me to the bone. The Highway of Tears, it turned out, wasn't just one highway. It was a phenomenon reported across multiple states, even multiple countries. Lonely stretches of road where people had vanished without a trace, often leaving behind vehicles in perfect working order. In some cases, there were reports of strange lights in the sky. In others, witnesses described a feeling of lost time, of the world around them seeming to shift and change. The deeper I dug, the more cases I found that mirrored David's. A woman in Alaska whose car was found running, her purse still on the seat, footprints leading into the snow before suddenly stopping. A truck driver in Australia who vanished while making a routine delivery, his rig discovered idling on the side of the Outback Highway. I began to compile a file, cross-referencing cases, looking for patterns. Most of the disappearances happened at night. Many occurred in remote areas. In several cases, witnesses reported electronic malfunctions, radios cutting out, phones losing signal, just before the disappearances. As my off-duty hours became consumed by this research, I could feel myself changing. I became jumpy, paranoid. Every time I patrolled that stretch of Highway 50, I found myself scanning the horizon, half expecting to see strange lights or shadowy figures. My colleagues noticed the change. Mike confronted me about it one night over coffee at the station. "Sarah, you've got to let this go," he said, his eyes full of concern. "The Chen case is cold. It's eating you up." I wanted to tell him everything. About the Highway of Tears, about the patterns I'd discovered. But I knew how it would sound. I'd be taken off active duty, sent to psych eval. So I nodded, promised to take some time off, to get my head straight, but I couldn't let it go. The next night, I found myself back on Highway 50, off duty, my personal vehicle loaded with cameras and scanning equipment I'd borrowed from a friend in the UFO watching community. I don't know what I expected to find. Proof, maybe. Something to make sense of the senseless, to explain the inexplicable. What I got was something else entirely. It was just after midnight when my radio started to crackle with static. At first, I thought nothing of it. Reception was spotty out here at the best of times. But then I noticed the lights on my dashboard flickering. My headlights dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again. Heart pounding, I pulled over to the side of the road. This was it. The electronic interference reported in other cases. I grabbed my camera, ready to document whatever came next. That's when I saw it. A light in the field beside the highway. Not a flashlight or a vehicle headlight, but something different. It pulsed with a soft bluish glow, hovering about 6 feet off the ground. I stepped out of my car, camera forgotten in my hand. The light seemed to beckon to me, pulling me forward. I took one step, then another. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice was screaming at me to stop, to get back in the car, to drive away as fast as I could. But it was drowned out by an overwhelming sense of curiosity, of longing. I had to know what the light was, had to understand. I don't know how long I walked. Time seemed to lose all meaning. The light stayed just ahead of me, always just out of reach. I was vaguely aware of my feet moving, of the brush scraping against my legs. And then, suddenly, the light was gone. I blinked, disoriented, the spell broken. I found myself standing in the middle of the field, no idea how far I'd come. I turned back toward the highway, expecting to see my car's headlights. There was nothing. No car, no highway. Just empty desert stretching out in all directions, silvered by the light of a moon I didn't remember seeing earlier. Panic set in. I spun around, trying to get my bearings. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the dirt. My footprints, leading to where I stood. And beyond them, another set of prints. Familiar prints that I'd seen once before, ending abruptly in the middle of nowhere. I stood there, my mind reeling, as the full weight of my situation crashed down upon me. I understood now. I was no longer the investigator. I had become part of the mystery. As the first light of dawn began to creep across the horizon, I made a decision. I would follow those footprints, David Chen's footprints. Whatever had happened to him, whatever lay beyond that impossible ending, I would find out. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next. Then I stepped forward, leaving my own trail of footprints in the desert sand. Somewhere out there, in the vast emptiness of the Nevada desert, there's an abandoned car with its engine still running, and a set of footprints leading nowhere. The highway of tears had claimed another victim, and I had become just another unsolved mystery on the loneliest road in America.